Let's welcome in NFL expert Tyler Sullivan here to talk about the Patriots in this upcoming season. Tyler, we've heard rumors. Nobody really knows for sure what's going on with this Patriots offense, and also when it comes to the play calling.
Yeah, the play calling situation, it's been basically the same since the summer. Now, Bill Belichick is not going to name an offensive coordinator. If you were waiting throughout the summer for him to make some sort of proclamation as to, yep, this guy is going to be the offensive coordinator going forward, you're not really going to get that. The Patriots have been ambiguous at times throughout their history under Belichick about the coordinator positions. Good, for instance, they don't have a defensive coordinator in title. It's going to be kind of a combination between Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, it has been Matt Patricia who has been calling the plays and Joe Judge as the quarterback's coach. So you're going to still kind of get a collection of minds figuring out the offense with Bill Belichick kind of overseeing everything. But in terms of who's going to be in the headset of Mac Jones calling the plays, every which way we've looked this summer, that has been Matt Patricia. So that, to me, is pretty clear throughout going into this season. That's going to be the guy when you see down in Miami, the Patriots taking on the Dolphins in week 1, it is going to be Matt Patricia calling the plays. Now, in terms of the offense, my biggest concern is what Matt Patricia, technically his title is under, and that is the offensive line coach. The offensive line, as we saw against the Raiders, wasn't particularly strong, especially at the tackle spots. Mac Jones was constantly throwing off his spot. So, yes, he might be calling the plays, but the offensive line, to me, is one of the biggest concerns going into the year.
So let's talk about Mac Jones there behind that offensive line. We're going to do a little betting breakdown, maybe some props here. So last season, he had 22 passing touchdowns. The prop is Mac Jones over under 23.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go over here. Like you said, he had 22 last year, and you got to remember, there was a game in there where he threw 3 passes in a game against Buffalo where the wind was going crazy. I don't think that Mother Nature is going to interfere that much this season. Again, who knows? But I don't foresee that happening. And I do think the Patriots aren't going to be as competitive. It's kind of a preview as to what we're going to be talking about a little later here. But I don't know if they're going to be that competitive of a football team this year. I think they're going to be trailing quite a bit, which will dictate them throwing more passes. If the Patriots are down, that's going to cause Matt Patricia, Bill Belichick, Joe Judge, that brain trust to call more passing plays for Mac Jones. So theoretically, under that assumption, the touchdown totals are going to go up. And then when you look at the pass catchers, Devontae Parker, a contested catch guy in the red zone. I think he's going to be a factor there for Mac Jones. Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, I think they want to get involved more in the red zone as well. So for me, I'm going to go over on that.
Let's stay on the offense here. Let's talk about Damien Harris. So last season had 15 rushing touchdowns, 8 in the final 5 games. That 15, second best in the league. The prop here is 7.5. Do you go over or under that, splitting it in about half of what we saw from last season?
I know it sounds crazy when you cut it in half and you still go under, but I do here. You know, touchdowns are kind of this finicky stat for skill position players and especially running backs. And if you're following fantasy football, you know that Damien Harris is not the sexiest Patriots running back in these circles going into 2022. That's Ramondre Stevenson. You look back at last year, Harris had 44 touches, carries inside the red zone. Ramondre Stevenson only had like 26, and in all of those 44 red zone touches for Harris, 13 of them went for touchdowns. So if we expect Stevenson to get more involved in the running game, specifically in the red zone, and even Ty Montgomery, who was injured in that final preseason game, he hasn't been placed on PUP yet, which would indicate that his injury isn't too serious. We even saw him get some red zone carries in the preseason. So if all of a sudden you're starting to talk about more running backs being a factor in that area of the field, I think you have to go under here for Damien Harris. And not only that, like I mentioned earlier, Devontae Parker, contested catch guy, he is going to be a factor in the red zone. I think Jonnu Smith is a guy that obviously didn't have a great year in 2021. I think they want to get him more involved in the red zone in 2022. Same thing with Hunter Henry.
Let's go to the other side. Let's talk about Matt Judon, 12.5 sacks last season. Only New England player with 10 or more in a season in the previous 6 years. The prop for him, a little bit under as well, 10.
Yeah, I would still go over. I still see him as a double-digit sack guy in this defense. You look at that front seven, and you have Christian Barmore going into year 2, who I think is going to be a real standout for this team. Lawrence Guy, Devon Godchaux, those guys in the interior, I think, are going to make like easier for a guy like Matt Judon coming off the edge and making a difference and getting after the quarterback. And you saw last year, a lot of those totals happened earlier in the season. I think that Judon was dealing with a little bit of an injury down the stretch. You look at those numbers, I think it was like the last month of the season, he was unable to register a sack. And so when you get a little bit healthier, and I think you saw that going into that game against the Raiders in the preseason finale, he looked like a guy that was in midseason form and is carrying some strong momentum going into the year. I think he's going to have a strong second season with the Patriots, which includes getting, again, double-digit sack totals.
Let's look at this Patriots win total. So they went 10-7 last season. Their win total set at 8.5. When you work your way through their schedule, what do you feel about when it comes to the Patriots win total this season?
Yeah, I just don't know if this is going to be a particularly competitive football team. I have a lot of concerns with them. Obviously, we talked about the play callers, but I go under here. I mean, you look at just that first month alone at the Dolphins, which has been a house of horrors for this team over the last few years, including when Tom Brady was under center. You go to Pittsburgh, which is a tough environment with a good defense. The home opener is against the Ravens, which is a sneaky Super Bowl team in the AFC. And then you wrap up the month going to Lambeau Field to face Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I mean, that is a potential 0-4 start for the New England Patriots. And then the alarm bells start ringing. It does get easier from there. That middle part to their schedule does get easier. But then when you look at that back half of the year, there are multiple primetime games. And for me, the biggest thing that I don't think is getting looked at much, and when you look at all these schedules, is the rest advantage. It's the net rest edge is a stat out there. The Patriots are tied for the second worst net rest edge in the league. So most of their opponents are going to be well rested going against this team. So we have all these questions about the play calls, the offense, the outside corners for me is a big concern. But for me too, this team is going to be kind of behind the 8 ball to a lot of these teams that not only are going to be well prepared, but they're going to be well rested.
So they won 10 games last season. They did make it to the postseason. They lost in the wild card round to the Bills. Of course, the Bills are favorited in their division. They are plus 140 to make it, minus 165 to miss. Which do you take here?
Yeah, Amanda, you can kind of assume where I'm going here, right? I think they're going to miss the playoffs. And not only is it a tough schedule for the Patriots, 8th toughest in the NFL when you look at projected win totals of their opponents, but just the AFC got better. I mean, we're looking at teams that were on the outside looking into the playoffs last year, the Ravens, who we all expect to be back in the fold now that they're fully healthy. You look at the entire AFC West, obviously the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Denver Broncos and the Raiders. I mean, you can make a case that all 4 of those teams make it in. And then you start looking at division winners too. I don't think they're going to come close to catching Buffalo. I think the Dolphins might be better than them this year, depending on how Tua is able to kind of evolve in this offense. So for me, unfortunately for a guy up here in New England, I don't think we're seeing much playoff football.
Not a lot of playoff football. You mentioned the Dolphins may be better. Let's take a look at week 1. Maybe that already answers it there. Patriots at Dolphins. Of course, the Dolphins now with Tyreek Hill. You mentioned Tua may be playing a little bit better. Dolphins favored by 3 at home. The total is 47. What's your play in this game?
Yeah, I lay the points. I go with the Dolphins because, like I said earlier, the Hard Rock Stadium has been a house of horrors for the New England Patriots, 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 games against the Dolphins. And Tua Tagovailoa, for all the critiques that he's gotten over the course of his career going into 2022, he's played the New England Patriots extremely well. He's 3-0 against Bill Belichick as a starter for the Dolphins. And more importantly for me is, how are the Patriots going to defend the likes of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 2 of the fastest players at their position in the NFL? The outside corner spots for the Patriots are a huge concern for me. Jalen Mills has had a strong summer, but he wasn't signed to be a number 1 corner. He was signed to be a complement to Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson, who are now outside of the organization. That other spot, still a bit of a coin flip after getting rid of Malcolm Butler and Terrence Mitchell as they were bringing down roster cuts this summer. So for me, that I think is going to be a big Achilles heel for them, not only against Miami, but against other teams in the division like Buffalo when they have Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. I think that's going to be a real struggle for them defending the outside for them, and that's going to be apparent here in week 1.
Things may be heating up in Miami, maybe a cold fall and winter up there in New England in more ways than one. Tyler Sullivan, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Check out his articles on CBSSports.com. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.